WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar and Niamey, 7 p.m. in Lagos, Nigeria. Good evening and welcome to Newslink in West Africa, the Crash Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide at wadr.org. Here are the top stories. Calm returns to Niamey after early morning attack on the international airport, leaving behind heavy casualties. Burkina Faso and Mauritania renew commitment on security and regional cooperation. Several domestic workers in Senegal face assault and lack of formal contracts as calls mount for basic social protection.
They work extra hours without pay. They don't have days to rest. They are all maltreated and their rights are not respected.
And the Nigerian government to evacuate a second batch of its citizens from South Africa by end of June. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Sankulu Jibril Janko.
Many thanks for joining us. Newslink begins with an update from Niger as authorities have launched an investigation following the deadly armed attack on Jori Hamani International Airport in the capital, Niamey. Recall, we reported earlier that explosions and heavy gunfire rocked the airport in the early hours of Thursday after heavily armed assailants reportedly breached security and engaged security forces in a fierce exchange of fire. Troops were later deployed around the airport and nearby military installations as part of efforts to secure the area and track down the attackers. As Abdullah Hassan reports, the Nigerian army recorded deaths among its ranks.
Several hours after the attack, Niger's Civil Aviation Agency announced that operations at Niamey's Jori Hamani International Airport had resumed, with flights continuing as normal despite heightened security around the facility. While no group has yet claimed responsibility for the assault, the Nigerian Ministry of Defense confirmed that 11 soldiers and 2 civilians lost their lives, while 22 suspected terrorists were neutralized during the attack. The announcement was made in a statement broadcast on state television. The latest incident has once again raised concerns about the vulnerability of one of Niger's most strategic installations. Security analysts say the airport remains a prime target for armed groups because it hosts a military air base as well as the headquarters of the Alliance of Sahel States Joint Force comprising Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali. The attack also revived memories of a similar assault on the airport in January this year when fighters linked to the Islamic State group launched a major operation against the site. At the time, Nigerian authorities said 20 attackers were killed and 11 others arrested. The renewed violence therefore highlights the continuing security challenges facing Niger and the wider Sahel, where extremist groups affiliated with Islamic State and Al-Qaeda continue to stage deadly attacks despite ongoing military operations by regional authorities.
Abdullah Hassan reporting there. Mauritania and Burkina Faso intend to strengthen their diplomatic and security cooperation. This assurance was given yesterday, Wednesday, by Mauritania's Minister of Defense, who was on a visit to Ouagadougou. Hanana, Old City, was received in audience by Burkina Faso's President, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Let us listen to the envoy of Mauritanian President Mohamed Ould Ghazouani speaking after the meeting.
I conveyed to His Excellency the President of Faso the fraternal greetings and highest regards of President Mohamed Ould Sheikh El Ghazouani, along with his sincere wishes for peace, stability, prosperity, and progress for the brotherly people of Burkina Faso. This meeting provided an opportunity to commend the excellent relations of friendship, cooperation, and solidarity that unite our two countries, and to reaffirm our shared commitment to further strengthening exchanges and consultations on issues of common interest, particularly those related to security, sovereignty, regional integration, and the development of our peoples. His Excellency the President of FASO also asked me to convey to his brother, His Excellency Mr. Mohammed Ould Sheikh El Ghazouani, his fraternal greetings, as well as his wishes for success and every achievement in carrying out his high responsibilities in the service of the brotherly Mauritanian people.
Au service du peuple mauritanien frère.
Hanana Ould Sidi is Mauritania's Minister of Defense. President John Dramani Mahama says reparations for slavery and colonialism cannot be complete without recognizing the suffering of enslaved African women. Speaking at a global reparations conference in Accra, he said the impact of the abuses endured by women continues to be felt across the generations. His remarks come as Ghana holds leaders, legal experts, and civil society actors from Africa, the Caribbean, and beyond to advance calls for concrete reparatory justice. From Accra, Nadi Tete reports.
President John Dramani Mahama has urged the international community to place the experiences of enslaved African women at the heart of ongoing reparation discussions. Addressing the Global Reparations Conference in Accra, the president noted that women suffered not only forced labor during slavery, but were also subjected to sexual violence, family separation, and other forms of exploitation that have received limited recognition in historical narratives. According to him, meaningful reparatory justice must acknowledge these gender-specific injustices and their lasting impact on descendants and communities across the African diaspora.
Any framework for truth-telling, memorialization, reparatory justice, or historical reckoning that fails to recognize the specific experience of women will remain incomplete. And so, to all the women who have carried this cause, often without recognition, and who continue to advance it with conviction, intellect, and determination, we see you, we honor your contribution, we are profoundly grateful for your effort.
The conference comes at a time when the global reparations movement is gaining renewed momentum. In March, the United Nations adopted a landmark resolution recognizing the transatlantic slave trade as one of humanity's gravest crimes and calling for restorative justice for affected communities. Ghana, which champions the resolution, is hosting the 3-day gathering to move discussions beyond symbolism and towards concrete action. Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Okujeto-Ablakwa says the growing international support demonstrates that reparatory justice is no longer a peripheral issue, but an increasingly important global conversation. The conference has brought together African leaders, scholars, civil society groups, and members of the African diaspora to explore pathways towards redress, healing, and historical accountability. For WADR, Nadi Tete, Accra.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
The federal government of Nigeria says more than 742 Nigerians remaining in South Africa will be evacuated before the end of June amid growing concerns over anti-migrant attacks in the country. Authorities say the evacuation is part of efforts to ensure the safety of Nigerians who have indicated a willingness to return home. Correspondent Echenu Sasetu reports.
The federal government has assured Nigerians in South Africa that all citizens who have registered for voluntary evacuation will be brought home before the June 30 deadline. Minister of Foreign Affairs Bianca Odumegu Ojukwu says government remains committed to the safety and welfare of Nigerians abroad and will ensure that no willing returnee is left behind. According to the minister in a statement, the evacuation process is already underway, with the first batch of 258 Nigerians having arrived in Lagos earlier this month. She disclosed that about 1,000 Nigerians registered for evacuation following renewed anti-migrant tensions in South Africa, leaving more than 742 persons expected to return in subsequent batches. Authorities also say support measures have been put in place to receive and reintegrate returnees upon arrival in Nigeria. The evacuation follows weeks of rising tension and reports of hostility towards foreign nationals in parts of South Africa, prompting several African countries to assist citizens wishing to return home. For WADR, Yechenu Sasetu in Abuja.
Here in Senegal, domestic work remains one of the most common yet least protected forms of employment across Senegal and West Africa, with the vast majority of workers operating without formal contracts or access to basic social protection. These concerns are being raised at a forum in Dakar convened by the Center for Research and Action on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. The organization is calling for stronger enforcement of labor laws and improved access to sustainable social protection for domestic workers across the region. Edit reports.
According to research, more than 90% of domestic workers in Senegal and West Africa do not have formal employment contracts, exposing them to exploitation and limiting their ability to seek legal redress. Madam Jewel Kotanjai is a representative of the domestic workers.
They work extra hours without pay. We don't have holidays. They don't have days to rest. They are all maltreated and their rights are not respected.
For Dr. Fatou Jallo, Executive Director of the Center for Research and Action on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, political will is still a challenge in ensuring these rights.
Across West Africa, what we would like to see is the ratification of ILO Convention 189, the convention that protects the right of domestic workers worldwide. In Senegal, we are pushing, but still we need that political will that will help us to pass the last phase, which is the ratification.
Ousmane Sis, Vice President of the National Assembly's Commission on Sustainable Development, who reiterated the Senegalese Parliament's commitment to strengthening protections for workers in the sector.
The National Assembly will pay particular attention to two major initiatives. First, the expansion of social and health protection. Second, reviewing and strengthening legislation to put an end to abusive practices.
The forum comes amid growing calls for domestic work to be fully recognized as decent work, with the same rights, protections and dignity afforded to workers in other sectors.
Imo ended with that report. We will bring you more on this in our guest interview segment. As the world marks the World Refugee Day, Liberia is being urged to do more to integrate refugees and asylum seekers into society. The call comes at a time when forced displacement continues to rise globally, with more than 120 million people uprooted by conflict, violence and persecution. Well, for Liberia, a country that once produced hundreds of thousands of refugees during its civil wars, the issue remains both humanitarian and development concerns, as it now hosts refugees from across the region. WDR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Paco reports.
Officials, humanitarian organizations, and members of Liberia's refugee community gathered at Painesville City Hall on Wednesday to mark World Refugee Day on the theme Solidarity with Refugees. Speaking at the event, Justice Minister Osford Tour urged the international community to provide meaningful support to people displaced by conflict.
We are doing what it means to sit in a foreign land and wonder what of whom still exists. That memory is not a wound we should nourish into bitterness. It obligates us to be the kind of country that others can run towards.
For the executive director of the Liberia Refugee Repatriation and Resettlement Commission, Ko Bangalu, the country's experience with displacement should inspire greater solidarity with those seeking safety and interpretation.
Today, Liberia continues its tradition of hospitality protection by hosting refugees and asylum seekers. We remain committed to upholding our international and national obligations toward persons in need of protection.
Stakeholders emphasized that refugee protection should go beyond emergency assistance and to focus on long-term integration, equal opportunities, and economic empowerment. Liberia currently hosts more than 1,900 refugees and asylum seekers, many of whom have fled instability in neighboring countries. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. calm returns to Niamey after early morning attack on the international airport, leaving behind heavy casualties. Burkina Faso and Mauritania renew commitment on security and regional cooperation. Several domestic workers in Senegal face assault and lack of formal contracts as calls mount for basic social protection. And Nigerian government to evacuate a second batch of its citizens from South Africa by the end of June. Well, still ahead in the news, we have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Now, health talks. Let's do some health news because Guinea is hosting a regional technical workshop aimed at strengthening the One Health approach across West and Central Africa. The 3-day meeting in Conakry has brought together health experts, technical partners and representatives from several countries to explore ways of improving the prevention, detection and response to public health emergencies across the region. Christopher Aticho has the details.
At the opening of the regional meeting, Guinea's Minister of Livestock highlighted the need for stronger cooperation among countries to better prevent and respond to health threats. He emphasized the importance of sharing best practices and improving coordination mechanisms to tackle emerging sanitary risks.
The workshop bringing us together today represents an important step in this process. It provides ECOWAS and CEMAC countries with a valuable platform for exchange, sharing experiences, mutual learning, and collective reflection on the best strategies for implementing the One Health approach.
Une seule santé. Speaking on behalf of development partners, the World Health Organization's resident representative in Guinea, Mamadou Ouribaude, reaffirmed the World Health Organization's commitment to supporting the recommendations and outcomes of the workshop.
The World Health Organization reaffirms its commitment to supporting states in strengthening integrated surveillance, joint risk analysis, and preparedness and response to health emergencies.
Guinean Prime Minister Amadou Ouriba called for a collective response to health challenges, urging countries in the sub-region to deepen collaboration and remove barriers that hinder information sharing and joint prevention efforts.
Disease does not respect territorial sovereignty, which is why it is essential to recognize that this has become a transnational issue. It can no longer be treated as a purely national concern. You now have the important task of preparing clear roadmaps.
The regional meeting runs until June 19 and aims to strengthen the One Health approach and boost health resilience across ECOWAS and CEMAC member states.
A report by WDR's Channel Alpha Ibrahim Balde, voiced by Christopher Aticho. Also, at Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, the world's two largest cocoa producers have agreed to align their cocoa pricing policies in a move aimed at boosting farmers' incomes and strengthening their influence on the global cocoa market. The agreement was reached at a high-level summit on the future of the cocoa economy held in Abidjan, where President Alassane Ouattara and John Dramani Mahama reaffirmed their commitment to closer cooperation in the sector. The two leaders pledged to harmonize the farm gate prices to ensure better returns for farmers and reduce market distortions and improve coordination between their countries. The initiative will also involve aligned cocoa premiums and synchronizing crop season calendars, measures expected to curb cross-border competition and enhance the bargaining power of both nations, which constitute rather 60% of global cocoa exports.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Now, domestic workers across West Africa continue to face widespread labor rights violations, despite existing legal protections, with studies showing that more than 90% of domestic workers in Senegal and West Africa operate without formal employment contracts. The issue is under renewed focus in Dakar, where lawmakers, labor officials, trade unions and rights advocates are calling for stronger social and health protection measures for domestic workers. A sector dominated by women and often characterized by low wages, long working hours and limited legal safeguards. Our guest is Dr. Fatou Jallow, Executive Director of the Center for Research and Action on Economic, Social and Cultural Rise.
We have done several research across the region, and more than 90% of them do not have contracts. They don't have labor agreements. They are just working because it's an informal sector. Here in Senegal, for example, 90% of the domestic workers do not have access to social security. Across the region, generally, 99% of those domestic workers said they have experienced violence during their work. It can be moral violence, physical violence, and other ill treatment that should not happen in a workplace. More than 98% are not affiliated to any syndicate or association in the region. That means that they don't have spaces where they can really talk about their rights, defend collectively their rights.
All right, why are these workers still working in such conditions, working without contracts, without social protection? What are the push factors?
In this region, the employment rate is very low. Most of the workers who are in the informal sector, often they are there because they don't have any other job opportunities. So job opportunities is very weak, especially for girls and women. Most of the women that we have seen across the regions comes from the rural area. So they don't know really how to bargain for their right, and they don't have any other options. So for different reasons, economic reasons, social and cultural reasons, most of them who might be able in their rural villages to work in the agricultural sector have seen the agricultural sector being really shrinking, and they have to find other alternatives. And some of them, the easiest one is to get into the cities and go for this kind of work.
How serious is child labor in this issue or in this sector?
Child labor is a very concerning issue. We have seen that more than half of the domestic workers are young, some of them being even between 12 and 15 years old, something that most of the legislations in those countries is not allowing, but still is happening, is a very prevalent issue. And for child labor comes as well with many other abuses, because the child are more vulnerable, they are more voiceless, and that as well is a very concerning issue. Beyond child labor, there is as well human trafficking, for example, in certain countries, especially for domestic workers that are at the border of certain countries. There is really an issue about human trafficking.
What specific reforms are you requesting across West Africa?
Across West Africa, what we would like to see is the ratification of the ILO Convention 189, the convention that protects the right of domestic workers worldwide. And what we have seen so far is only the Republic of Guinea, as well the Republic of Ivory Coast, that have actually ratified that convention. In Senegal, we are pushing. The technical work have been done by the different ministries, but still we need that political will that will help us to pass the last phase, which is the ratification of that convention. What we would like to see, and which is important as well, is reinforcing the monitoring work of labor inspections across the region, because many of the labor inspections are very weak. They don't have human, financial, and technical resources that are needed for them to really operate and protect those workers. And as well, there is the principle of inviolability, having the possibility to enter into the houses, because they are just considered as private space, and often labor inspections do not have a free access or easy access to those houses, and that's as well one of the challenges. Another thing we would like to see is an empowerment of the domestic workers, economic empowerment, but as well legal empowerment. 99% of the domestic workers across the region don't know what is their right. They don't know that they have a right to a contract. They don't know that they have a right to rest. They don't know that they have a right to a decent work, for example. And we need legal empowerment strategies that really can help them. But as well, we need economic strategies. As I said, many of them are not associated to social security. That means when they are facing health issues, they might have a lot of challenges to access health services. That is one of the issues we have to resolve. And that's why in this third phase of the projects that's aimed at strategically strengthening the domestic workers sector in West Africa. We are emphasizing on the issue of health, accessing social security, but as well on the regulations of all those agencies that are now being set up in the different countries and working just in order to facilitate the access to the market by domestic workers. Those agencies can be a very good way for them to be protected, but they have as well a lot of challenges in terms of just applying the best practices possible.
Dr. Fatih Jallo is the Executive Director of the Center for Research and Action on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. Well, in sports, South Africa came from behind to hold the Czech Republic to a 1-1 draw in their World Cup opener on Thursday, just moments ago when that game ended. Well, Mikhail Sedilki gave the Czechs an early lead, but Bafana responded late in the match, with Toboho Makoina converting a penalty in the 83rd minute to secure a valuable point for the Bafana. Now, the results keep South Africa's hopes alive as they continue their Group A campaign. Yesterday, I should say, Wednesday, Ghana began their 2026 World Cup campaign with a 1-0 win over Panama, sealed by a dramatic stoppage time goal from Caleb Yerenchi. The Black Stars earned 3 points despite the absence of vice captain Thomas Partey, who was denied a Canadian visa. The results moves Ghana into second place in the group behind England and makes them the second African side to win this tournament after Cote d'Ivoire. Meanwhile, DR Congo made history on Wednesday by claiming their first ever World Cup point after a 1-1 draw with Portugal in their opening group K match in Houston. Portugal went ahead early through João Neves, but Yohan Wissa equalized before half-time, becoming the first Congolese player to score at the World Cup finals. Well, in other sports news, Eli Wahi will not take part in Cote d'Ivoire's German match in Toronto. The Ivorian Football Federation announced today that the Elephant striker has been denied entry into Canada. Well, the reason is that Wahi is at the center of a sports betting investigation. He is suspected of deliberately receiving a yellow card during a League One match against FC Metz on May 17. The Nice player also questioned by the French police as part of investigations. Still with the World Cup, the 2026 FIFA World Cup continues to set attendance records. According to reports, in just 6 days of the competition, more than 1 million spectators have attended matches, averaging over 65,000 fans per game. Well, Africa has featured prominently among the best attended fixtures. Of the Brazil-Morocco match attracted nearly 80,700 spectators, while 80,545 fans turned out for Senegal-France encounter. Already, rule of the match against Morocco, Neymar will also miss Brazil's upcoming game against Haiti. Well, the Brazilian forward will remain at the Seleção's base camp to continue his physical condition program and will therefore not travel to Philadelphia with the squad. However, he resumed training with the Brazilian national team today. We've come to another edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Maudu Juve for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. I am Sankula Jibril Janko. Good evening.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Baft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.